Okay, so how do you perceive class at Brown?
Well, I want to make a distinction between social class, which is a purely economic issue, and socioeconomic status, which is much more a social issue. With socioeconomic status, what we have is the society's collective judgment of an individual's worth to that society by dint of what they contribute to that society. So people who contribute more and more important things to a society are judged to be more worthy of respect and honor, and are given more deference than people who contribute less. And the best way that we have of looking at status in a society is a person's occupation. A secondary way we have is looking at their educational attainment. So educational attainment is the precursor, presumably, to occupational attainment. The farther you go in school, the more you develop yourself as a person, the more you learn how to think about things in new ways and deeper ways than most people do, and therefore the more developed you are as an individual. And as a consequence of that development, you are also then entitled to the better positions in our society. So you have the better jobs. So you can go on and become a doctor, or you can become a lawyer, or a professor, or a bank manager, or a bank owner. And all of those things you will do because you have developed yourself sufficiently, and therefore you are worthy of respect. And I think status is, and concerns about status, are intricately linked to a person's experience at Brown, especially for those who come to Brown from lower socioeconomic status levels, hoping to better their socioeconomic status. But to do that, there's a real challenge involved. And it isn't only connected to just the challenge of doing well in school. The kinds of things that higher status people do are the kinds of things that are not respected by lower socioeconomic status. Lower socioeconomic status people tend to respect things which are very concrete in their product. So you build a good cabinet, and that's worthy of respect because everyone can see the quality of the work you do. But if you're an attorney, what do? You push papers around. And who can see the quality of the work that you do there? And yet, we recognize very strongly that that kind of production is what our society values. So the lower socioeconomic status person is in a bind. This is off the work of Richard Sennett and Jonathan Cobb, sociologists who wrote a book called The Hidden Injuries of Class. And one of the things that they noticed was that people of lower status are very ambivalent about success in our society. On the one hand, they want their kids, if not themselves, to be more successful because it's nice to have not just the money, but the respect and prestige that comes from being of high status. But on the other hand, to do that, you have to do things you don't personally respect. Or is attempting to go beyond his parents' or her parents' status levels, that means that they are faced with a real choice. They have to distinguish themselves from their family and their neighborhood by developing themselves far beyond where their family came from and get the social respect that everyone goes. But then they also know that they are doing something that they have been taught not to respect. By the same token, if they do distinguish themselves, they become fundamentally different people from their family. And as a result, the connections between them and their roots can be very strained because of the parents' ambivalence, which is internalized by the child toward status climbing. You get the notion that on the one hand, you're very proud of your kid because your kid goes to Brown. And on the other hand, your kid's becoming a smart-ass college student who really doesn't know about what life is really like. So the child is faced with the choice of either distinguishing the self by developing all what Sennett and Cobb call badges of ability, but therefore straining their relationships with their roots, or they can stick with what they are familiar with and do something that they respect personally, but they know will garner no social respect, and therefore they will have no relative socioeconomic status. That's a real challenge that middle and upper status students at a college like Brown don't have to face, because these kinds of growths and developments are precisely what upper and middle status parents are looking for in their children. They're not threatened by them. They expect them. So there's an extra added attraction, if you will, or extra added challenge to the transition to college for lower status people. Not only do they have to figure out how to do college, but they have to figure out how to fit into a place that they have not been socialized or prepared for. And that can make life stressful in very different ways, qualitatively different ways, for lower SES students. And that can make them feel, among other things, like they're an imposter, that they are a mistake, that they shouldn't be here, that someday they will be discovered and they will be shamed. Or it can make them feel like they are betraying their families, even as they are fulfilling the stated family wish of going beyond. In doing so, they know they're cutting themselves off from their families, and it's a very tricky bargain to make. Furthermore, it's often a one-sided bargain. Parents don't usually ask their children, do you want to go to college? Parents tell their children, we want you to be better than us, so you have to go to college. And we're going to take 2 jobs and all this sort of thing to get you to college. And you don't have much to say about it. So it's a one-sided contract that can also put pressure on the child. What if that child doesn't want to go to college? He may have no choice. Or she may decide, I have to do what my parents want. And then they get here without the really intrinsic motivation to do well for its own sake, only because the parents want to do it, want them to do it. And they're not going to go far if that happens.